So hey everyone in the room, upstairs, in the recording. So this session is about security and staking. Staking, we've seen it with the other talks. From institutional or retail, it's getting more and more adoption, more value lock. And so at some point we need to secure that from the infrastructure point of view, where the validation key run, to the smart contract layer, where you have applications like Lido, for example. We've talked about EigenLayer as well. So today, with these amazing panelists, we'll try to answer the question, basically how to secure staking on all the layers from infrastructure to smart contracts. And maybe first, we can start with a quick round of introduction. So maybe Rob, if you want to introduce you and Halborn.
Sure. So I'm Rob Behnke. I'm the CEO and co-founder over at Halborn. My background is pretty diverse. I've built and exited a couple companies before finding out about Bitcoin back in 2013. Actually started a growth marketing agency back in 2016 called Token Agency. And what happened was, no matter how good of a job we would do with talking about amazing, awesome projects, they just kept getting hacked left and right. And so we knew that, with our absolute love of this technology, we knew that there needed to be a very different focus rather than the marketing side. So I founded Halborn back in 2019. From the start of us really just reaching out from an institutional side first. So my co-founder comes from the world of 20 plus years in traditional security. We knocked our heads together, and for example, the very first client we ever signed was the New York Stock Exchange, working on their digital asset initiatives. And so since then, Halborn has really made a name for ourselves by a very strict focus on quality and mix of both institutions where it's enterprise as well as sort of Web 2 and Web 3 assessment work. So really, that's where we are today. We're constantly working with your small Web 3 protocols, teams of 5, as well as your gaming companies we've been working on some really exciting games, which is really fun, some stuff that we can talk about. I get to tell my parents we work with Barbie and Hot Wheels with our work with Mattel and so on. And then they're like, well, what do you actually do? And then their faces just, they don't understand. And then we get to work with major financial institutions too. So, next month we're actually doing a digital asset summit at the New York Stock Exchange with BNY Mellon. So these are just a couple of things that we're up to at Halborn.
Cool. And what about Quantstamp?
My name is Valerian Callens. I am here instead of Sebastian Banescu from Chainproof. So Chainproof is a subsidiary of Quantstamp, offering insurances. It's a licensed entity, and its insurances service are for slashing insurances and also for smart contracts. So it gives us an edge because we audit the contract and then we have a better visibility over the security of the product. And at Quantstamp, it's a security company where we audit smart contracts, but also Web3 solutions in general. And before, I was an IT auditor for Société Générale, but then I decided to go to the Web3 side because I am more rock and roll.
Like that. And Spearbit?
Hi, I'm Hari. I'm one of the co-founders of Spearbit. My background is building the Solidity compiler at the Ethereum Foundation. I'm a mathematician by training, and staking is very important part in our hearts because one of our co-founders, Alex, wrote the deposit contract, which is used by everyone to run validators. Around $50 billion of Ethereum in it. We like to deeply work on Ethereum, and Spearbit is a very highly curated marketplace that connects independent security talent with projects that need them.
Cool. So yeah, the first question I want to ask to this rockstar panel is maybe about security in the Web3 space in general. We've seen these numbers. 82% of protocols that got hacked are from DeFi. More than 3 billion in USD have been hacked or stolen. So what's your thoughts on kind of this evolving trend of getting hacked? And how are you fighting that each in your different companies? So maybe you can start with Spearbit.
Overall, I would say I'm pretty optimistic about the future of the industry and the security. It's never been easier to write secure smart contracts today than before. I tell this to people how it's easier to write a fuzz test today in Solidity than any other like popular programming language. It's easier to write a fuzz test in Solidity than in Rust. You just need to add an extra parameter. It's easier to do formal verification in Solidity. There's like SMT checker, there's Satora, there's like runtime verification. I'm very, very optimistic that in the next few years we can like decrease this number a lot. We see a lot of clients like taking security extremely seriously. Like for example, primitive built internal tools for doing risk analysis. Like I think 3 years ago, like seeing like projects putting so much effort into security would be like unheard of. I think another example would be Sablia. Like you should have a look into like Sablia's test suite. We tell this to every client. They are extremely well organized, extremely well tested, like very, very good code bases these days. Morpho is another example. They have a lot of internal work on formally like modeling their protocol, formally thinking about a lot of how the protocol mechanisms. So yeah, I know we don't have a good track record as an industry, but I'm very, very excited to see how people are taking security seriously these days. And this is the right time to build. It's easier to build now than ever before. Much more easier to like secure contracts today.
And what's your thoughts at Quantstamp?
I would say that it's an asymmetric environment because you have to defend your contract from attackers, but if there is 100 way to attack the contract, maybe you, the developer and the auditors will detect 99%, will try to get the 100%, but the attacker still need one opportunity to attack, and that's why it's harder to defend the smart contract than to attack it. And then I would say also that the knowledge right now is more shared than before. So the defender, but also the attackers have a lot of resources to learn about that. Before, you needed to make a lot of effort to have an edge over the defenders. And the last thing is the DeFi environment is growing, and a lot of small DeFi blocks are being put together, and we are building more complex economical components. And now defending a DeFi protocol is not only based on the technical vulnerabilities, but also you need economical understanding of how it works. It becomes more and more complex, so on the auditor side, we have to adapt and learn more on the economical side.
So working both on the security of the smart contract, the logic, and then working on the economics in general of the protocols?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And on the Halborn side, how do you see like this trend going? Like, do you see like a lot of new DeFi projects as well coming into the space and being audited? Like, do you see also like maybe related to that, like, do you see like kind of always the same errors that are made by the smart contract team?
Yeah, there's a lot of similar errors for sure. There's a constant amount of sort of focus on, so funny enough, there's a lot of focus on smart contracts within the world of Web3 security when close to 50% of all the issues going on have nothing to do with smart contracts. So humans will always continue to be the biggest attack vector of kind of all the things. And then the problem, but it's also part of what we're all here to do, is that even today in traditional Web 2 security, like regular run-of-the-mill cybersecurity, there's over 4 million unfilled jobs today. So in the world of Web 3, like that, you can probably just make that a little bit smaller, but it's still like there's a need for every, the trends that we hear, like, there's like a new Web 3 security company coming out all the time. It's like, that's fantastic. We need all of the resources. We need all of the people working on all the things because, we're talking about bearer assets right here. So like the moment that we have access to, that particular token or that crypto, like, it's yours now, right? So the problem will only kind of continue so long as there's sort of tricky economic incentives going on in the industry. So yes, to answer your question, like, of course, there are a ton of new DeFi projects, a lot of new CeFi projects, a lot of new sort of like gray area, like Web 2.5 projects, right? So that will only increase. Incentives will only increase as well once the new, like once the bull market hits again, or whatever market you want to call it at this point. And you know, the reality is that it's important that if you're a founder or if you're working on something right now, that you are hyper-focused on your development talent to do something that they're not normally supposed to do. So in Web 2, you tell people to move fast and break things. In Web 3, if you move fast, you lose all your investor money. All right? So like, it's really important to be slow and steady. And that's like really crucial. But also something where, like, I mean, we all see it, like when you, like, just getting the onslaught of messages being like, hey, we need an audit, we need to launch next week. Like, okay, that sounds great. That's not for us. Keep it up. I hope you didn't take that much investor money if that's the initiative. But unfortunately, we see a lot of that. And so, I think that there just needs to continue to be more of a mentality, really, of if you are going to, launch this amazing new product, that you take your time with it, and sometimes the economic incentives don't work that way.
Yeah, I think like security in the product roadmap in Web3 is kind of essential there.
Right.
And maybe like if we zoom in a little bit on the really staking use case, maybe like. What are the trends you see there? We've talked about Eigenlayer earlier. Like, there are a lot of innovation in the space.
Yeah.
What kind of new project do you see? Do you see a trend there as well from the project you audit? Coming into the space, like, what are the challenges you can face when you audit a staking protocol compared to like another like DeFi protocol, for example? Like, do you see any difference, any trends there?
The beauty of there being open source sort of DeFi Lego blocks amongst all of this is that there are, there needs to be all of these different attempts, right? There needs to be new dev teams constantly deploying new different concepts and new ideas. So yeah, I mean, our team of security professionals see it all day, every day. New tweaks, an obnoxious amount of forks with tiny tweaks, but then a very large amount also still of like really unique aspects. So yes, we're hearing and seeing all sorts of different opportunities, whether it comes to Celestia or Eigenlayer, or kind of like name your new multi-chain bridge. So we see it, and is auditing that different? It is slightly different, and unfortunately, us as quote auditors in the space. We're in a kind of a bind of a situation because you have teams that have X amount of dollars to spend on security initiatives and then are given Y kind of scope, like here is your scope, and this is precisely, and of course we're all in super, every team is in super high demand to work together. So the difference is like, what are you focusing on within that particular audit? So, for just the general community looking into a security of a project that you want to put any sort of money into, it used to be like, do you have an audit? Like, and here it is. But it really needs to be like, what is within that audit? Yeah. And of course, like, I know we'll probably get to this, but there's a million other things you can do besides just pure smart contract auditing. But are there differences? I think actually, you'll be able to talk a lot more about the very specific nuances of the auditing of the contracts. Yeah. Yeah,
I would say that the staking, auditing a staking system is quite standardized because a staking contract, actually, it's a use case basic. But on the other side, people can add some layers. So then you can maybe pull the rewards, or you can pull the amount that is put and deposited. And so maybe on higher level, we could have, how to say, a part of Web 2. So I would say that auditing a staking system. It's also auditing the staking, the whole process, which includes also some Web 2 parts, some front end, maybe the amount deposited by everyone, if it's shared, maybe sometimes it can be put on centralized or off-chain mechanism. And if we only audit the on-chain components, we won't have a visibility over that. Yes, I think it's my vision.
And Harry, like earlier, we had a small chat about the complexity of the consensus layer on Ethereum. Like, what kind of challenges do you see with this new consensus layer on applications like Lido, for example, or any liquid staking protocol, for example?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And I also want to add, I generally agree that staking has been worked out for a long time, staking in general. But I think liquid staking in terms of Ethereum is a little bit different because I think the protocol itself, the Ethereum protocol, wasn't really designed for liquid staking. So there is a lot of trust assumptions you have to make with the actors in the protocol. I think a lot of things that you have to look for is you have to assume certain kind of actors are trusted. They can report correct data, and if they, there is this analogy that the chain is a dark forest. The chain is highly adversarial. You have to worry about what happens when this data is posted. Can you unstake before? Can you try to make some MEV out of this after something gets reported? So all these things have to be taken care of. There are multiple proposals to improve this in the EVM chain. There are proposals to include new opcodes so that more staking data can be accessed from within EVM. This will probably make a lot of the system less trustless. You can make it more trustless, which is better for the ecosystem. And the second problem is that MEV creates a lot of centralization issue with staking, which is a very interesting problem to think about. The problem is that usually when you if you stake, say, 1 ETH, you should be able to get a pro rata proportion of one out of everything. However, the more you have, and if you manage to extract MEV, you can actually extract more. This creates a centralization where the person with the more stake can actually get higher yields. This is not good for the ecosystem because then you are centralizing all the validators. So that's an off-chain challenge, and this is something we have to fix as a community. How do we prevent a super majority to own all the stake? And this is why I like multiple projects attempting liquid staking on Ethereum.
And all this complexity with the consensus layer, how do you see auditors being basically working with a project like that? Because that's kind of a whole new protocol to learn about. It's not just EVM. How do you see that? Do you see many auditors kind of being specialized into auditing staking applications?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. This is also a challenge we face because you have to understand a lot of specifics of the Beacon chain to audit something like a liquid staking protocol. However, a lot of security researchers, this is not the core expertise of many of the security researchers, and we face this challenge over and over again in Spearbit. So what we do is to bring a consultant who is specialized in the Beacon chain. I think Kiln, we actually reviewed Kiln, but we have reviewed other liquid staking protocols before. So what we do is to bring someone. We are deeply connected with the engineering of the entire ecosystem. We build Solidity EVM, lots of core ecosystem, a lot of core projects in the ecosystem before starting Spearbit. So we're very well connected to people who work on core Ethereum projects, and we bring people who actually worked on Beacon chain to work with the security researchers to level them up on some of the Beacon chain constructs and be there to answer any complex questions. So that's how we train up security researchers on Beacon chain specific ideas.
And at Quantstamp, also, I wanted to ask you a question because, so we mentioned there is not only smart contract, there is also infrastructure. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of risk there. On your side as well, what are the changes to basically being specialized in staking from infrastructure to knowing the consensus layer and the smart contract? Do you see any challenge there? How do you face this?
We also tried to have some people ramping up on these topics. And recently I audited a contract for an internal company that wanted to double-check the data that is sent when you make a deposit, and also to separate the roles to make sure that one deposit is deposited with the correct value. And for that we had to look at the specs. And the quality of the specs for that process is quite good. But so in other chains, sometimes I'm not sure the specs is always that good. And in that case, it would be more challenging as an auditor to audit that process.
And we see there is certifications when you do infrastructure, like SOC 2, for example. Do you think there should be a certification for more specialized for staking? Whereas it's staking infrastructure or even probably staking applications that are built on top. What's your thought on that? Yeah, go ahead, if you want. You want to take it?
You're looking at him the whole time.
Yeah.
I would agree with your hypothesis.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think that would be possible? And how, for example, at Halborn?
I'd love for that to be possible. Yeah, I think it is possible. But there's a lot of, it's very difficult to get standards passed with anything in a decentralized, manner with this. So it's been tough to get general security, quote, auditing standards, so let alone staking standards. Now, luckily, there's some regulations coming out, but that doesn't really matter to the DeFi space so much. So no, I don't. I mean, frankly, liquid staking, scares the hell out of us, and that's a good thing for a security team to be focused on because, funny enough, we're all in this room together today talking about, Ethereum. Where did Ethereum come from? The concept around Bitcoin. Well, where did Bitcoin come from? The 2008 financial crisis, where a bunch of derivatives completely blew up, and then what happened, right? So, what's liquid staking? Well, it's a bunch of
murder attempt.
That was awesome. Someone's coming after us. Yeah.
Bitcoin, so.
Yeah. Someone's coming after us, obviously. Yeah.
Don't talk about Bitcoin again.
All right, I won't talk about derivatives. Yeah, but no, I mean liquid staking is derivatives. So cross-chain liquid staking is something that should concern everybody in the space. There's this concept that is obscurity through security through obscurity. So just because it's relatively new, nothing's really happened in the space. But as time goes by, researchers at Halborn have found things in open source repos that have been around for 5-6+ years. And you can still, there's still ways of doing things. So standardization would be great and just continue to focus there, but there's still so much work to do. I'm going to say the most generic thing in the world that everyone hears, which is that we're still just so early. And that's really important to keep in mind, especially keep in mind when you're thinking about deploying personal capital into any of these highly risky scenarios, where you can talk to all of the security researchers in the space, and they'll still tell you that there's you need your audits, you need your secure coding practices, you need your crowdsource audit work, you need your bounty audit work, and even then. Is that a proper level of defense and depth? Probably still not. So there's still just a ton of work to do in the space.
Interesting. And if we zoom out a little bit, just on staking, what are kind of the innovation you see in the next years, and what are you excited about in that space? Maybe Harry, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about distributed validation technology. So one annoying thing about, say, staking at home is that you need 32 Ether, which is not affordable for most people. But however, with advent of more advanced cryptography, you can actually find ways around it and still form like a very trustless and decentralized way to like do staking in a way. That's something I'm pretty excited about. But I think it also has like applications into like liquid staking as well. You know, this is the same problem you face. Like you don't want to be fully reliant on like a single person to manage a validator. So it's better to like distribute some of the key shares among people and still like participate in validation. So very excited about you know, how we can use some cool cryptography to solve challenges in staking.
What about you, Valerian?
I would see two domains. The first one is the way to pool some money on a single deposit, and then to make sure that it's easy to split it when you make your withdrawal. And the second one, yes, as you said, liquid staking is a huge topic, and we can get a lot of innovation on that part.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited about a lot of different security products coming out and security tools coming out to help liquid staking providers. And so that's going to be really important just for the space to continually evolve. So there's new security programs to help for secure coding developments. Halborn's been working on a concept called Seraph, which is a blockchain security notary solution. So, you know, in general, this idea that any major withdrawal functions or certain levels can be actually pre-approved by a notary that you assign. These are new innovations that should fundamentally help the security of liquid staking so that, you know, any of these major events can hopefully, you know, be decreased.
Yeah, definitely a lot of great stuff coming up. And maybe like if we talk more about each of your company and role in the industry, can you like tell us more about your approach? So we mentioned like economic risk, technique risk, infrastructure risk as well. Sure. Like where do you put the cursor in your company? And how do you see like the auditor space evolving? Especially like do you see a lot of new auditors coming into the space? Do you see like any challenge to onboard them to audit smart contracts or Web3 application in general? Maybe Harry, want to take it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, Spearbit is pretty young. We've been around for less than 2 years. We started Spearbit because overall we were not happy with the security of the ecosystem and we wanted to do something about it. And in the last 2 years, there was a renaissance like independent security researchers, and we saw that this was where all the top talent was going, and Spearbit wanted to find a way to, you know, bring these people in teams and collaborate on security reviews. That has been like Spearbit's approach from day one. Yeah, I mean that is in short. How about you guys?
I would say that Quantstamp audited a lot of different components from the Web3 space. And we also see a lot of different people coming right now because they learned a lot. They made their first audits on Code Arena, Sherlock, and also as bug bounty hunters. And we hired some of them, but the amount of new people coming into the space is huge, a lot of talented people, and yes, this is the main trend, I would say, right now.
Yeah, I feel like every day you hear about a new Web3 security auditing firm, and that's a really good thing. It's validation that there needs to be more things. I'm trying not to repeat everything I said earlier. That actually answers a lot of your question. Like, you know, there's a lot of unneeded. But really what has continued to make Halborn different is it's always been a hardcore focus in just quality over quantity at all times when it comes to really our team as well as the projects that we take on. We were founded, you know, my technical co-founder, Steve Walborough, is a SANS fellow, and so educating he actually wrote and authored the course with blockchain security for SANS, which is kind of like almost like a Harvard for cybersecurity in the US and Europe. And so by, you know, hyper-focusing on exceptional talent in traditional cybersecurity, bringing that training scenario into actually focusing that on folks coming into the space. We basically then have sort of an always-on approach of being able to bring highly technical, just fantastic people into the world of Web3. We're going to continue that as well when it comes to our training. We're launching a training module very soon. But some of the major 0 days that Halborn has found and publicly released come from folks that frankly didn't know what COSM WASM was 3 months before they found the major 0 day that affected the whole thing. And so that also just continues to validate what we all in the space are working on, and just sort of how, frankly, how scary it still is in that sense. Like, oh, like this person could just find it like that, and and so that's where. I think Harry was mentioning this before. It's amazing to see the risk tools coming out too, because like it's the only way that enterprises are going to actually, the whole institutional adoption thing. It's the only way it's going to happen is that there's proper standardization, productization, especially actually in the risk departments, which tends to, risk and security tends to be hand in hand at most financial services firms. So that's. That just continues to be something that we look at too.
Yeah, and it's really impressive to see like all the new tools that are being released. Even like this time at EthCC we had the DeFi Security Summit this weekend. Like we see the security community growing. So yeah, that's pretty nice. Well, I think we are out of time, so maybe you can give a round of applause to. And maybe you can take some questions if there is any in the audience. Yeah. I don't know if there is a mic or no. No.
No mic.
I can speak up.
Yeah.
Maybe you can repeat the question for the audience. So, what do you guys think of? I know people speak about eigenlayer and shouldn't apply to everything. I think that might be a norm. Thing that we know of right now. But what would you guys think would be the top 1, 2, or 3 use cases that are very suitable for eigenlayer?
That's a great question. I have a fantastic team focused on eigenlayer, so they can talk to you a little bit further about that. You know about more about it?
I mean, I can't really comment deeply on it right now.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
There was a panel on that.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Yeah. I've heard a lot about it as well. Celestia and a couple of other opportunities in that side. So yeah.
How would you guys qualify the difference between the good guys and the bad guys in the crypto, like as in terms of number of people, white hat, black hat in crypto, and maybe how does that, you think, compare to other industries?
I think there's an obnoxious amount of insider things going on the inside of a lot of projects. So there needs to be, that's why there needs to be continuous work in that space. Now, frankly, there's a lot of insider threats within traditional organizations. And I think that, there's some other firms that have nothing to do with, security auditing, but like, with what Chainalysis, if anyone's seen what Chainalysis is capable of now, it's like, you gotta be really concerned about like trying to be a black hat in the space at this point, because your off-ramps are going to continue to really not, are much more limited nowadays. So that's actually a great thing, by the way. So that's just something to think about.
I agree. There are a lot of positive incentives to be a white hack.
Right. Yeah.
And the black hat, it will be a short-term profit, but it will be very hard to extract it. And so it's better for a long-term, nice and quiet life to be a white hat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, unlike traditional Web 2, it's much easier to liquidate assets if you find a bug. In traditional Web 2, the problem is that oftentimes, if you find a critical bug, you have to sell it to someone to liquidate it into like cash. Whereas with the blockchain, Ethereum, almost every single mistake can be exploited you can convert a simple mistake to, train cash. Like it's like a piñata that you can like hit and like cash will come out. I mean, this is the big issue with like Web 2 and crypto security. And we also, privacy is a very important component for Ethereum as well. There are many tools built for privacy, like mixers, like Tornado, and this makes it somewhat easy to like be a black hat in Ethereum. That's the unfortunate case. However, like with things like Immunify and there are large bug bounties on many like protocols, which incentivizes like hackers to actually report the bug and get a very, very big payout. Like this is like much higher than what you can get in like Web 2, and I hope the trend continues and we continue like. I'm very optimistic about like the future of security. I see a lot of talent coming in, like extremely good talent, and yeah, we need to like bring more of them in. That's the only way to like fight the black hats.
And because it's permissionless, you can have this talent come in from anywhere in the world, like they can just read stuff.
Exactly, yeah,
for sure. Highly recommended that if you're a founder in the space, or if you're like make sure that you are definitely putting funds aside and putting it into bounty programs, but also know that with that, you also need to tell your investors that you're investing in someone or a team that's going to be full-time sifting through the garbage that comes through all the bounty programs, because there's a lot, it's mostly false positives, but it's the one that comes through that is worth it all. And frankly, that also is really needed in the space, because there are so many other projects that frankly, like Spearbit's doing great and Immunify doing the bounty stuff. Like there's so many more projects that are not on those platforms offering decent enough bounties that, I would imagine there's some real ethical quandaries going on with most independent security researchers that are like, hey, this guy isn't even responding to my message on this bug bounty program, or they did and they were offering me $1,000 for like, hey, look, I can do this thing and pull out $1 million plus. Like, you want to really make sure that you're incentivizing the community. Mm-hmm. The world works off of incentives. So that's how you switch, that's how you flip black hats into white hats immediately.
Any last question? No?
No. Sounds good.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Yeah.